Greetings, everybody. I hope you are having a great weekend. I hope you guys are enjoying your day. We have a very informative live that we want to discuss with you guys. This topic is going to be very interesting. It's going to tie a lot of things in. So I hope you guys enjoy. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. The more subscribers we have, the more this platform can grow and more informative content we can bring out. So make sure you subscribe. We've seen a lot of uptick in our subscribers. So once again, thank you to all our subscribers for subscribing to our YouTube channel and really listening to the message that we have. Sign up to the website at BAIO says register. We want to see as many people come, be part of this organization, be part of what we're doing. We got so much going. And you see what we're collaborating with and what we're working with the Liberian Leadership Academy. We just got so much going on, and we want you to be a part of it and really join this journey and this movement. I have my fellow co-host right here, Brother Hollipsism, and today we're going to be discussing Florida wants to ban reparations and why you need a power base. So for those who are sitting under a rock or those who are, are not that in tune with the news, there is a proposal by the Florida Legislature to propose a constitutional amendment that would ban giving out reparations to African Americans who were enslaved in the United States. This is from a Florida source. It is from Newsroom Jack. It's from Newsroom, not Newsroom Jack, but it is from the Action News Jacksonville. So it says Florida wants to ban reparations. And of course, this is the video that is discussing it. It's about 2 minutes to 35 minutes. I'm not going to play it, but I'm just going to read some of the articles so that you understand. So it says the joint resolution SJR 582 filed by State Senator Blase Inglogia, Republican representing Spring Hill, would prohibit the state and local governments from paying reparations to descendants of people who were enslaved prior to the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Ingoglia argued it was meant to prevent slavery reparations from gaining traction in the Sunshine State. Slavery reparations aren't the answer. It's investing in Black and Brown communities on things like education, infrastructure, and opportunities. And that's what I think we should be talking about, said Inglogia. State Representative Angie Nix, Democrat Jacksonville, on the other hand, pointed out there have been no serious efforts or even any bills filed seeking to implement slavery reparations in Florida. It's simply a bill to rile up the base so they can raise money and they can distract from their failing leadership in Tallahassee, said Nixon. Ingoglia said, countered that there have been bills at the national level and in other states like California pushing for reparations. By putting a ban into the state constitution, he argued it would stifle any future efforts to do the same here in Florida. Bad ideas that are proposed in other states seem to work its way into other states, such as Florida. This is a proactive way of making sure that we take the prospect of slavery reparations off the table, said Inglogia. And I think I'm butchering the name, but I think that's how you pronounce it, Ingoglia. But Nixon argued Republicans' time would be better spent focusing on issues currently impacting Floridians' pocketbooks and quality of life. This property insurance crisis, this auto insurance crisis, the fact that our schools are hemorrhaging teachers, and the fact that people can no longer afford Florida, said Nixon. If the joint resolution is passed by supermajorities in both the State House and Senate, 60% of Floridians would still have to vote yes next November for the reparations ban to be made constitutional. And that is from Action News Jacksonville. And that was by Jake Stoffen, the Action News Jacks. So I wanted to talk about that reparations bill that's being proposed in context of leverage. And what do we mean by leverage? How leverage is wielded, and really what historical precedents we can leverage. So excuse my word of using the word leverage, that we can use and understand. So there are a couple of definitions of the word leverage. Well, according to the word leverage, if we look at a couple of dictionaries, you have dictionary.com, you have Collins Dictionary. The definition of the word leverage means to enhance or to have any significant power. Leverage is to provide something such as a corporation or supplement something. And then, of course, you have with power, with authority. That is what leverage is about. Some examples, or should I say, some synonyms of the word leverage, um, really are to have a grip, support. Those are some of the few synonyms that we refer to by leverage.
You want me to break it down in the street terms?
Yep,
It's what you have in your possession that can force people to do what you want them to do.
there you go. In simplest terms, you have the tools at your disposal to make people do what you want them to do. And if we look at the current landscape right now, that is a very difficult task in terms of here. That is a very difficult task. And the reason why is because in order to have leverage, you have to have something of significance, something of importance, something of value that has a great impact on society, on politics, on economics, anything that is going to have a major influence in determining the outcome is leverage. An example would be if you produce 95% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, you are doing nano electronics, you're doing wafers, you're doing a lot of the ultraviolet lithography. If you have control over that, or you're the ones who producing that at that rate and that percentage, you have leverage. Because if you take that away, you can't make advanced electronics. You can't make nano electronics, microelectronics. You can't make semiconductors because you don't have the pieces. You don't have the wafers. You don't have the ultraviolet lithography. You don't have those parts, the transistors necessary to make it. And so that has a drastic influence because no iPhones, no electronics means that your economy in society is stifled. So when we look at leverage, we have to understand that leverage is all the tools that you have at your disposal that's going to make people do what you want them to do, or it's in their best interest to do it. Now, when we look at our people here in America, we need to ask this question, and we just really need to have an introspection. We just need to think deeply. We need to look within ourselves and just ask questions, have conversations with yourself, have a lot of thought exercises, and really ask yourself, what leverage do we have? Think carefully. You can stop, you can meditate, you can come back to this live. Ask yourself, what leverage, based on the definitions that I gave and what Hollop has told you, the ability to exert force to get something that you want or is in the best interest, you have a grip, you have support. What do we have as leverage? Now, once you take enough time, you answer that question, ask yourself, if we do have any leverage, is it effective? Is it allowing us to get where we want and what we want? If we don't have any leverage, then ask yourself, what is the alternative? I want us to just stop and think for a moment. Just stop, process what I just said, process the questions that I just asked, and just really answer these questions to yourself.
Answer them out loud too, because I want to hear.
Put them in the comments.
I want to hear what the leverage is. If anybody feels that we have.
So, if we don't have any leverage, what are the alternatives? Because you cannot boycott something with a nothing. You cannot boycott without an alternative, without a substitute. You cannot do it. If you want it to be successful, if you want it to be influential, you have to have an alternative. And we do have an alternative. And I want to give the story of this man, one of our great heroes. This man right here. Now, if you look at him, you're probably not going to know who he is. You think this is just an old black man. But if you've taken the time, you've studied the history, you'll know who this is. He was one of the greatest black leaders in the early 20th century. One of the lights that got the respect of Garvey and the McNeil Turners of the world. He was a man who came from the Barbados. He was a guy whose family was of Beninese descent. They came from Dahomey, particularly Porto Novo. I'm sorry, not Porto Novo, Grand Popo in Benin. Back then it was referred to as Dahomey. His father, Anthony Barclay, was a notorious anti-slavery rebel. This man right here's name is the Arthur Barclay. And he was one of the most educated Liberians at the time. He was one of the most highly respected black men of our time. Not only of our time, but of his time. Excuse me. He was very educated. He had worked his way into politics. He was at Liberia College. He was in, as you see here, the Gibson administration. There's Barclay standing in the middle. You have the Honorable H.W. Grimes. You have the Honorable H.I. Moore. And then you have the Honorable H.A. Williams. I really love this photograph. I really love this photograph. You have a president of a republic, which at the time was the only republic on the continent of Africa. and one of only two black republics in the entire world, the other one being Haiti. One of only two areas to survive the scramble for Africa, the other one being the monarchy in Ethiopia, which at that time was called Abyssinia. And here you have these black men who are governing this society. And in the middle, standing tall up there, is Barclay. Now, you're wondering, how does Barclay tie into reparations? How does Barclay tie into leverage? His story speaks about it. So, in the early 1900s, Britain was trying to take over Liberia. They tried doing it in so many ways. And one of the ways that they tried to do it was through economic hitmen. Now, you're wondering, who is this man right here? This man right here is Harry Hamilton Johnston. He was a notorious white supremacist. He was in the British administrations. He was the one who was making the case that South Africa was favorable for white colonization, for European nations to rise in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Namibia, Botswana. At that time, they were referred to, at the time, South Africa wasn't a country yet. It was still divided up. You had the English, who were now more in control, but the Union of South Africa doesn't come until 1910. Just to the north of it in Botswana, it's Bechuanaland. That's a British protectorate. Zimbabwe is referred to as Southern Rhodesia because Zambia is Northern Rhodesia, and then Malawi is Nyasaland. Namibia is a German colony, is German Southwest Africa. So during this time, again, you have the continent being carved up, and you have these Europeans like Harry Hamilton Johnston who are saying that, these parts of Africa are favorable for European states, European colonization, European basically settler colonialism. And then you have places in Africa like Liberia that should be under the yoke of the British. And so Harry Hamilton Johnston writes a book in 1906. That book in 1906 is called Liberia. Now, that book has a lot of half-truths and half-lies to it. So the book is this. So as you guys see, here is the book Liberia by Harry Hamilton Johnston. And again, it was written in 1906, and there was a lot of lies to it. Now, he did describe the wildlife and plants, or the flora and fauna, but the book was a hit. It described people like Daniel Bashir Warner as being mulatto. It referred to people like Olmsted Luca as being mulatto, although I can't confirm that. I really don't know too much information about Olmsted Luca. That's really one of the few references of the man who wrote Liberia's, who was the musician behind Liberia's national anthem in 1847 when Daniel Bashir Warner wrote it. He makes a lot of half-truths in this book, and he's the one who is stirring up trouble in Liberia with trying to get the indigenous population to rebel against the central government. Then he's also trying to take over Liberia through a British loan. So he wants to give Liberia this British loan. Now, the reason why he wants to give Liberia this British loan is he wants it as a pretext. He wants it as a justification for Liberia to be taken. Because, as we all know, when you have a loan, you have to pay it back. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to give Liberia a loan that's going to be difficult to take to pay back. But at this time, remember, Ivory Coast to Liberia's east has been colonized. It's been taken by the French. Up to Liberia's north and west, Guinea has been taken over by the French. Then, of course, to the north, further north and further west, you have Sierra Leone. Well, right due north of Liberia is Sierra Leone. And there, the British have taken over. They've been ruling that area for decades. Some of Liberia's territory, such as the Mono River, the Galenas territory, has been taken by the British. And that's not good enough for the British. They want all of Liberia. They want all of Africa to be colonized, and they want Liberia to be their territory, just like the French want Liberia to be part of their territory as places that were Musardou and the Kavala River were all taken from Liberia and given to the French. So Liberia being in a difficult situation at the time, Barclay is going to have to work with the British, whether he doesn't see it as ideal, but he has to work with it. But Arthur Barclay, because of his astute intellect, because of his way of being a very great politician and diplomat, was able to use, because he knew the law and the courts, and he had the legislature. He was able to, not to get too deep into it, prevent Liberia from being taken over by the British. And again, the leverage that Barclay had was he had the courts, he had his legislature that were thoroughly behind him and were caring about the sovereignty of African people. And he's able to stave off that encounter. And the reason why I bring this up about Barclay and the story of Barclay is because when you have that government, that court backing you, and you have this astute awareness, and you have that experience and that knowledge as somebody as great as Barclay, you can get something done. You can get that influence. That is that power. That is that leverage. You gotta have that. And we can use this forward in today. That is why his story is so important in understanding leverage and what we can apply into the context of what I discussed early on in this live. In order to make moves now and in the future, you have to know where you have come. You have to know that the past, know that this has happened before and it can be done. And they have given us and they've set forth a blueprint. Barclay and the Liberian legislature at that time show that there are ways to get what you want. There are alternative ways. That you don't have to just go along and just, blindly just accept whatever they're giving you. You can find alternative ways, whether through the court, legislature, sort of just giving an appearance. You're going along, get along, but you know what you're doing. Thinking they got you because they thought they had Barclay in. They thought they had Barclay under control. Barclay was just going to sell out. He was going to tap dance. He was going to put on a show for them. And he ended up with the leverage in the courts and his Liberian legislature ensuring that the independence and sovereignty of the republic was protected. Liberia is still standing today. And why is that important? Because it shows you don't have to beg. That is the most important thing I want. They did not have to beg. They were not going to beg. They knew their rights. They knew what they had. They knew they had this place right here. They knew they had the government, the legislature. They knew they didn't have to beg. They were going to demand in different ways. They were not going to be, braggadocious or flashy about it, but they knew, and they demanded, and they did. This happened later on.
Right. Jabari, I have a question. I mean,
Yeah.
Arthur Barkley is a great example, but even the misconception that somehow the country in the first place was given to Liberians. You want to talk a little bit about how John Day and the founders of the Republic, how were they able to use the same concept of intellectual superiority to even gain uh, physical land sovereignty for Liberia and their independence?
Yeah, so they were able to use their leverage, intellectual leverage, in their land ownership when it came to the ACS. One of the most memorable things that we can learn is from the Constitutional Convention that they were a part of, and one of the things that they used was they used the ACS words and threw it back at them, which is the ACS at the time, because before 1847, the ACS was there. The ACS had influence, and one of the things the ACS was doing was they had land ownership, land access, and when Liberia and these great men, the John Days of the world, the Hillary Teagues, the J.P. Gripons, the Beverly R. Wilson, when these people came and they did this constitutional convention, and they said, listen, we are just declaring ourselves as a republic. One of the very first things they said was yeah, this all the land that is here belongs to the Republic of Liberia. And the ACS was saying, well, what about us? And they say, number one, that wasn't a major discussion to them, because the point that they were making is you're dealing with us as sovereign people. We are sovereign citizens. We're a republic. You have to deal with us as sovereign, independent people,
Right.
as a republic.
So I don't think they said all the land belongs to the Republic. What they said is, in the Constitution, going forward, this Republic is an asylum for African people from the most grinding oppression. Therefore, in order to be a citizen, you must be an African person. And in order to own land, you must be an African person. And no one can purchase land. No one can purchase land from any of the indigenous inhabitants or kings in the Republic, within the territory of the Republic. This didn't mean that the Republic owned the land. This meant that the indigenous people retained their sovereign rights to their land, that not even a Liberian citizen could go to the hinterland and procure land from the indigenous. They did this because they had been seeing what the British and the French had been doing in the vicinity, which is signing land treaties, similar to what ACS had done, signing land treaties with people who were supposedly ceding their rights to their own land to the British Crown, to French, to whoever. So brilliantly, they put this in the Constitution, the supreme law of the land, that no one could do this. And to this day, Over 80% of Liberian territory is in control of the indigenous inhabitants of Liberia. Not the repatriated people, but the indigenous inhabitants. And in fact, before you can even sign a concession agreement, that needs to be signed off by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and whoever is serving as a chief or a ruling body in the traditional sense over that vicinity. So even the negotiations for B Mountain had to be negotiated with the indigenous people of Grand Caymount County. B Mountain is a location of 2 gold mines. So this idea that there was this massive land grab by repatriated African Americans is so outrageously false. Does not even hold a drop of water, because all of the land laws in that country are protective. And this idea that repatriated Africans to Liberia behaved in the manner in which Europeans did is also false. Because as we've said repeatedly, it is Liberia and Liberia alone where the indigenous people and African people who repatriated control 100% of the territory. Most of that being in the hands of indigenous. The vast majority of it. All of the land in Lofa, in Nimba, in Grand Jita, in the massive areas of the country are completely controlled by the indigenous sons and daughters of the soil. It is the coastal territories where you have repatriated Africans and African Americans and along the St. Paul River. But for the most part, the land is controlled by the people who had been there long before Columbus sailed to the New World, my family included.
Yeah, and that is really, really important, and that goes into to leverage when you have great men like that, and you have that government entity that can craft laws and build and amendments to protect you. You can go places. And that's why having an alternative is important. Because when we look here in the States and we look at the situation, we constantly, we're getting frustrated, or we're getting angry, we're feeling helpless. And part of the reason for that is you have to have an alternative. As I stated earlier, you can't boycott something with a nothing. You can't just say, well, we're just going to boycott everything out of existence. I mean, you have to have an alternative. You have to give an alternative. You have to have something that people can turn to. And the stories of Barclay, the stories of the founders of Teague and Day was to give that alternative. You have an alternative. You have a place where the land is owned 100% by Black people. You have an alternative where Black people are the citizens of the Republic, and they are the driver's seat. You have a place where the indigenous population has been respected and always has been respected. And so when you have that alternative, it gives you hope. It gives you energy, gives you motivation, because you know there's an alternative. You know that something else and something new can be done. And when you have that alternative, as Liberia was being, the freedom from grinding oppression, one of the things that they also stated was they wanted to be seen as a respectable nation in the world. They said that we are among the nations of the world. And that is important because when you are a nation, nations have rights. Nations have rules, they have laws, they have ways that they expect themselves to be treated. When you are stateless, when you are nationless, when you don't have that, you're subjected to so much, because who is your representative? Who? When you're stateless, you don't have a representative. Or when you nationless, or a stateless people, stateless nation, as they say, who represents you? And so you get into this cycle of frustration, of helplessness, of dreaming, and most importantly, of escapism, trying to cope because you feel there's no alternative. And that is what Gripe On and Beverly R. Wilson and Amos Herring and them did. They wanted to give that alternative because they understood it was bigger than them. And that by having this asylum, by having this place, it gives you tools that you can use to influence yourself, the environment around you, and also your people. There's a reason why they went. And when I read about them, it makes me feel so proud. It makes me feel so proud. I remember when I was in high school, and I remember reading about Liberia. And from that moment, when I read about it in the story and how, what they did, I felt hopeful. I always used to sit in class, sitting in study hall, and I would always feel hopeful because I felt there was somewhere finally. I have somewhere. I have an alternative. I don't feel like I'm stuck in one place. And that place is still there. And, it's got everything we could possibly want, everything we possibly could dream. It makes it so much easier for us. We have a starting point. I know I've been on my soap opera for 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Any holla you want to come in and give, your opinions on, of the importance of leverage and alternative and and the importance of having it and Liberia that being that home and really just or just how they made it possible.
Well, I would like to speak on the leverage angle because I think that this is not something that our people talk about a lot. Like, you're asking people to do things for you with no leverage, and then you're wondering why those things can't get done. I mean, you really have to think about that. There's not much to think about. You need leverage. Anything that you want other people to do for you, you got to have leverage in order to get them to do it. People aren't going to do it out of the kindness of their hearts. They're not going to do it because you're unified. Unity is not leverage. It can be. But in the case of what we're talking about, your unity and the fact that you're unified with your people, that doesn't mean that somebody else is going to do something for you because you're unified. What can you do with the unity? That's another question. So I just want to address that because someone I think had posted that earlier.
Mm-hmm. And really, that is again, what do we have that we can use or alternatives that we have that can put the pressure? That's the conversation, and that's why I really ask people, think deeply about it. Take the time to sit and think about it. Actually introspect about it. Because like you said, Hala, we don't talk about it enough. And because we don't talk about it enough, we go around in circles and we're stressed out. We feel like we're stuck in the sand and we're in quicksand especially, and we're just sinking.
Hey, Barry, can you let people know how telling people that you're not going to vote for them is not leverage?
Yes. So the reason why just saying you're not gonna vote is not really leverage. I mean, of course, politicians are not beholden to your vote. You can vote however you want to vote. But the reason why that alone is not good enough is because even if you don't, things are still going to get done. What it just shows is you're disengaged. In my opinion, you're not gonna, if you don't vote, it's not like the political system just stops running. The political system is going to continue to run. It is a system. You have to have more than just not gonna vote.
And also, if you're not voting in an area where you don't control or dominate in numbers, then what difference does it make? That's not leverage. Because they can go, oh, well, you don't control this area anyway in terms of demographics, so your vote doesn't really matter. It's not gonna, I'm gonna win regardless of whether you vote or not. So there goes your leverage.
And then what resources do you have that would make them feel it's in their interest to not do it? Because let's think about that for a second. A lot of decisions are driven by interest. If you say we're just not going to vote, I mean, as a politician, what interest do I have of even trying to address your existence? What's the interest? You said you're not going to vote, so why bother even thinking about your issues or your concerns? And especially if it's a place where you, like you said, Hala, are the numerical minority, have very little economic influence. I mean, you not voting, good. That's less that I have to worry about. Yes, you can do it in spite or to get back, but that, to me, that is I would say more of a emotional response and not so much a strategic response or even a a productive response. Again, I get it. I get it. You want to let politicians know that you're dissatisfied. But okay, you don't vote. Now what? There's always the now what. And that's what we have to think about. Now what? We don't vote in the election. Okay, fine. Now what? What's the next plan?
You know what it reminds me of? Alton Maddox from the United African Movement used to say this. I'll never forget it. He says, asking a person to vote without political education is like asking a person to do open heart surgery with no medical training. I'll never forget him saying that. I held that for a while. And it's the truth.
Because it's the now what. Okay, we don't vote or we vote. Now what? There's got to be something after that. There's got to be the now what after that. We protest in the streets. Now what? Okay, cool. We march and stuff. Now what?
True, we hit people with a chair. Now what?
You have to have,
it's always this reactive way
Mhm.
of doing things. We react to everything instead of being proactive.
There's no end game. If you ask it, like, what is the end game? What is your goal? When do we know that mission is complete or the goal has been achieved?
Yeah, people who play chess know this. You know, like there's stages in chess, and at the end of chess, before you win the game, is the end game. You got to have a strategy for your end game.
And that end game is going to tell you how to move. So you know you're very coordinated. You're very you're very specific with how you engage. You're just not all over the place, just disorganized, discombobulated, just doing stuff to just do it.
My
You
brother,
know there.
I'm sorry, my brother used to play chess. Me and him used to play chess, and he used to tell me that sometimes if you have a good end game, you can beat a person who has a good opening. Like they can have a good opening, they can have a good middle stage, but if you have a good end game, you can actually defeat them.
Because you know what you want. You know the objective. And here's the thing. You know that that objective is tangible and that objective can be measured. You know, my goal is to make sure, because I have not played chess, so I really don't know. I'm sorry. But
You should. You would be a good chess player. You
but
should.
it's based, your goal is to win. Your goal is to make sure, I assume, like all the pieces of the opponent have been taken out. I'm not for sure how you would have to educate me on that all up, but
Well, you have to, check the king. You don't have to take all the pieces out, but you just got to make sure the king can't go in any position. Once you do that, it's checkmate. You probably do you not have people you can play with? Because I know that's what my issue was. I didn't
yeah,
have a
I
lot of
didn't have
people I
people to
could
play
play
with.
with.
I really wasn't exposed to chess. I was only
Yeah.
exposed to checkers. So
Yeah, it's a good game. You should really get into it.
might need to play it. Definitely. Um, but that really goes into the crux of it. Because for example, like we just discussed earlier, you have a situation like what's going on in Florida. Okay, let's say in a worst case scenario they pass the amendment. Let's say the amendment passes, Hollow. Now what? Now what you gonna do? What's the plan?
Well, remember what I always say, that they're really on a socioeconomic and political level. There is no we, there is no us, and there is no our in America. What we are in America is a bunch of scattered individualists, and the only thing that unites us is the way we look. It's like our aesthetics. So it's like you can't really rally and do anything of that because everybody's just looking to get a check for themselves. So what are you going to do? If you're not even an actual people, you don't operate as a collective, then what are you going to do? Even if that's why I said if I was in a position and I were in control, I would just give it to them, because then once you give it to them, then the whole racism and discrimination thing is over. You can't ever bring that up again. Because all they'll do is just say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're complaining. Didn't you get check number 1120?" That's it. There's nothing else for you to say. You've given away any type of so that thing that you're holding on to now, you won't ever be able to use again.
I don't
I
know
gave
if
you I gave you a check. Why are you complaining?
I don't know if that is I don't know if I agree with that, brother. Reparations are due and owed. It doesn't absolve any future or current actions or current crimes. And so just because you pay restitution for burning down my house yesterday, that doesn't absolve you from burning down my house today or tomorrow. Um, I don't think I don't have a problem with people demanding reparations, and everyone, should pay for their crimes. Period. So I don't think the reparations thing, whether it's being, spun to be it's a cowardly thing, let people fight for reparations. But my thought process is it's not either or. It's what do we actually have control over now? And what do we have now that we can focus on? I have zero qualms with people demanding justice. That's all reparations is, demand of justice and some kind of restitution for grave injustice. That don't allow these people to spin this narrative as if people are begging for something that's not owed to them.
Oh no, let
Whether or
me
not
clarify.
these,
Let me
yeah,
clarify
whether
what
or
I
not these,
mean.
please do, please do.
I don't mean to trivialize reparations. What I'm looking at it from the perspective of the people in power. Because what you're saying is
Why?
correct. But
Why are you looking at it from
what
the
they're going to
perspective of?
do, because what they're going to do is, if you take reparations and you trivialize it to an individual thing, where it's just about a person getting a check,
Okay.
then that's what they're going to take it as. They're going to say, all right, you got your check, stop complaining. That's what I mean.
I mean,
So
I hear you
that's one of the
still, but even
downfalls.
then, if that's assuming that they're still not continuing crimes.
Oh, even
They
if they
could say
continue the
that, but
crime,
what do we say?
even
I
if
could
they
care
continue
less
the
what they
crimes,
think, right?
yeah, even if
So,
they continue the crimes, they're still going to say it.
and if they do, so what? It doesn't make what they say what it is. I
Right,
mean, they're
but it
saying
would
that
be a
now.
whole lot.
If you go ahead.
It would be a whole lot more effective if we didn't view it as an individual thing and
Sorry,
approached it
y'all.
from a collect.
You're good.
Oh Lord, what happened?
I dropped my phone from the stand. Sorry.
It's all
No,
right.
you're good.
Yeah, what I was
I
saying is,
think.
it would, if we've stopped viewing reparations from this individualist mindset of people just getting a check, and started viewing it the way that it should be, as a collective issue, then
I
we
think
wouldn't
we
even
do.
have to be having this discussion.
Yeah, but brother, I think there's always going to be people who aren't very smart. And I
Yeah.
don't really, that's just what it is. Not everyone's going to be very smart. Not everyone is, measured the same or cut the same, and that's just what it is. I don't think people who know better should focus on those who don't. I think people who know better should focus on the narrative and push it. Of course, there's people that think it's individual stuff. It's suspected. That's how they've been educated. That's how we've been miseducated to think.
Mhm.
That's not focusing on that is not the solution. Setting up the answers, the correct solutions, the correct way of viewing it is more important than focusing on the incorrect way to view it.
Mhm.
So the correct way to
My
view it is not about individualism. It is about an injustice that was done to an incredible mass of people that transcend borders and boundaries by
mhm.
multiple nations. So someone can be an African American and be a victim of Portuguese tyranny. So this is a
Mhm.
collective thing. When they did reparations for Germany, which is a very small, short period of time, right? The entire world paid reparations to Germany and reconstructed Germany. The entire world. So this, I agree with you and everything you're saying about the people who aren't very smart. But my expectations of the people who aren't very smart is exactly what they're doing. So what do
Mhm.
the smart people say? What do the Dr. Holips and the Jabari say? That's what I
Mhm.
want to do instead of worrying about what the people who have, are thoroughly brainwashed and miseducated. What they're thinking is irrelevant to me
I
because
would say.
their voice and their concept and their ideas is what's dominating every conversation. It should not dominate ours. I don't want to
I would
repeat
say
this.
this. I would say that for me, yeah, reparations are owed. That's not the dispute. The thing is for me, what I think is important is to, like you said, have that transnational, international, you know, mobilization or organization, because like you said, it's transatlantic. It's not just strictly here in America, and you can't, confine it.
The
But
the most important thing with Jabari, nobody receives reparations for something that's still happening. It's always about something that has ended. They didn't pay reparations to Germany in the middle of the war. Okay, it was after the end of the war. Is the thing that we're requesting reparations for, has it ended? It hasn't even ended.
Nope.
So there's a lot more for us to be focusing on. I'm not saying reparations aren't old. I'm just saying the thing that we're requesting reparations for is a continuum. It's still going on. And you can't negotiate for reparations in the middle. Like, you know, how can you talk about reparations and you're still on a plantation, still being enslaved? It doesn't happen. You're sitting on a slave ship talking about, I want reparations for being on the slave ship. The crime is still in process. What can we do now? What do we have now to build on? What do we have the power and the ability to do now without asking for someone to be punished for a crime that's still in process?
Yep.
Or to pay restitution for a crime that they're still in the process of committing. And I think that's why Brother Holub saying what he's saying is very correct. It's a ridiculous thing to ask for, because they're going to come back and say this. The reason they're going to come back and say that is because they're still engaging in the crime. So of course they're going to say all kinds of stuff that doesn't make sense, like, well, we already gave you this, shut up, we're going to keep kicking you, because they're still doing it. We have land. We have resources. We have talent. We have human capital. We have material capital. We have financial power. This month of December, collectively, percentage-wise, we're going to spend more money than any other group in this country and probably everywhere, because we're master consumers. We took that economic strength, the collective economic strength, and invested it in something that we could yield a result from, like ourselves and our own resources, our own capital, our own iron mountains, our own gold mines, which we already own. Then countries wouldn't have to be begging for these malicious concession agreements from people who are there to exploit. Those are things we don't actually discuss, but we should.
We have it right there. We have all the resources right there. It's sitting there. We have to utilize and mobilize what we have. It's right there.
You have to be involved. That's the biggest issue for me. It's like people are talking about, it's just like, and I agree with you're saying. It's like we can explain the problem all day long. There's people that are masters at that.
That's all they do every day on the internet.
Break it down all day long. But what you're not doing is getting involved in what the solution is.
It's
then
why
you hear crickets.
It's why, if it's not directly like what we're like, the stuff that we're, the conversations that we have, I don't engage like, oh, did you see that what this woman did to the sister? I'm just like, how many times have we seen this? We know this is going on. Now what is the next step? What is the end game? We know this is going on. We know we're getting kicked. We know we're getting punched. Okay, now what? Like, old news. I'm focusing on building, and that's where my mindset is. We have it. It's right there in front of us. We have it.
It's an inheritance is what it is. I mean, we actually behave as though nobody left us anything. We act like nobody left. Ain't nobody leave me nothing. I got to build from scratch. The hell you do. The hell you do. All those people did not die for nothing. They freaking went to the freaking fire, walked through the fire to leave something for you. And you ignoring that because you think it's too hard to do something with what they left you. You're more comfortable. Looking for other things to talk about. Ignoring. With inheritance comes responsibility. It's the
Yeah.
responsibility part, the taking responsibility part that people don't feel comfortable with doing. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in the fruit of their own labor. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that your hands can produce something.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? There's nothing that someone that has come before you has done that you can't. For example, little stuff. I live in a normal house with a relatively small yard. I produce food in this little yard because I can. Not because I can't afford to go to the supermarket, but because there's something fulfilling about
Mm-hmm.
taking my own hands and tilling the soil and seeing something grow. It reminds me that I am a godling. I'm a descendant of the creator. I can create, I can make stuff happen of my own will, with my own effort, and I can produce something. Being a producer might be as simple as making a bracelet. It starts to change your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
My effort can yield something that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and that kind of has been taken away. I used to write songs. I used to write songs in the background quietly, and people who are in the foreground would be applauded for things that I wrote. Nobody knew I was writing, but I did. You know what I'm saying? I knew. What did that give me at a young age back in the 90s? It gave me confidence. The confidence didn't come from people knowing I was writing. It came from me knowing I was writing this stuff. And it was blowing up. And it was blowing somebody else up.
Mm-hmm.
Do something. Create something. Be a part of something. Be productive. Motion, action. It keeps your spirit strong. Sitting and crying, and complaining and pointing. Look at Johnny. Johnny's not doing this right.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny's over here talking about stuff that Johnny should. The hell with Johnny. What are
That
you
is so
doing?
true. That's
Mm-hmm.
so true.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my
It's what
life, I've always been involved in projects and productions.
Yes,
And
you have. Yeah.
when
Look
I
at what you're
do,
doing now. Hold up.
yeah, when I
mm-hmm.
do get involved in the production, and it's just the nature of the beast, you
Yeah.
always come across things that are obstacles. And then the creative part is figuring out how to get around those obstacles to complete the project.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been
Yeah,
my mindset.
me being a civil engineer and doing, physics, you have problems as an engineer. Those problems got to get
Engineers,
solved and they got to be efficient. You can't sit here and say, well, we can't figure it out. You better
engineers
figure out
love
something.
problems. Engineers love problems. They love
Yeah,
them.
because we get to solve them. We get to
But
figure.
Rudy, I'm sorry, brother Baruti, please don't call me Dr. Fumble. I ain't no doctor.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He's
guys.
really
I call
fun. He's
myself
really
Dr.
fun.
Hollop ironically because they're giving away these doctorates like free cheese. So
Yeah, I don't want one of them doctor titles, please, brother. But I hear your point, and I think my point was really sometimes because I used to write, because I have a creative way with language, I say things sometimes to really that might sound extreme, just to express how outrageous something is. Clearly, I know that we're not, for the most part, involved in chattel slavery. But when I say the crime is still in continuous, I'm just saying that it is really a continuation of the same assault against our person. And there's no remorse for it. It hasn't really ended, it's just evolved. And so I know that we're not in chattel slavery. And so I'm not saying that we're still in Jim Crow or chattel slavery. All I'm saying is the continued assault on our likeness, on our person, is a continuation, and it changes over time, but it really hasn't ended. There hasn't really been a cessation of the attack on African people globally, is my point.
Mm.
So yes, please don't take it absolutely literally, but it was a figurative statement. And I know I'm not in physical chains, but I do also understand that this has been an evolutionary process.
Mhm.
And just call me Sister Carr. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a PhD or MD or anything like that. And don't want to be. Had every opportunity to be, but chose not to. Um, Yeah.
Yeah,
I
me
just really
neither.
want to. I just really want to go to the point of inheritance, and I really want to go into that because that's what got me to be an engineer. That's what got me to be an engineer. That's what got me to want to do physics, and then aspire for material science and engineering was just because before all I've been doing this, talking about this almost close to a decade. I mean, it's been about 7 or 8 years since I got on this journey. And I just remember when and I've said this numerous times on this live. I remember when I was in high school in math class, and I was in Introduction to Business Technology, those classes. And I just remember when I learned about it, when I learned about John Day and Hillary T, and I learned this, I was just like, I just kept thinking to myself, it's right there. Like what, everything is already there. Like, wow, I was thinking, we have to start from scratch and just, this is going to be a really tough endeavor. We're going to have to, do it brick by brick and all the steps. And then it motivated me. I was like, it's already there.
Right.
It's already been set up. All I have to do is maintain it and move with it. And so when you realize that you have that inheritance, which is why we just keep talking about, it's why we talked about Barclay, we talked about Day. Once you see that they've set it up for you, they set it up, it's there. They did all the hard work for us. They did the groundwork. Are we going to maintain it? Are we going to renovate it? Or are we just going to let it decay? That's you have the inheritance. It's like Holla, what you said. It's like you have $1 million in the bank, but you go into the welfare line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just Baruti, I've been around here for a while, so I think I can make this statement confidently. There's no conflation and muddying going on, and if it is, it's intentional.
Yeah.
This is not a confusion thing where, oh God, should we be doing it? No, it's intentionally confusing and muddying the issues so that people don't think clearly. That's purposeful. And the people that's trying to do something are doing it. The people that don't want to see it get done are doing everything they can to stop it from being done.
Yeah.
So there's no confusion in that sense.
I want people to realize that two things can be true. Um, Professor Alkati was one of my mentors, is one of my mentors. He's in his 90s and he's still very clear minded and still mentors me. But um, one of the things he used to tell me as a teenager is two things can be true at the same time. We're an either or world. He used to say this constantly. Two things can be true because as a young person, everything's black and white. It's this or that, this or that. And it took him time to kind of mold my mind to understand that many things need to happen concurrently for things to work. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Every gear in a machine can't perform the same function. The machine must serve the same purpose. I'm not going to take my energy and fight for reparations. While I believe 100% that reparations are owed, my energy is going to be spent figuring out what to do with what we've inherited, how to build that, better position ourselves, empower ourselves with what we have. Both things are good things to do for African people. Don't stop demanding reparations. I don't see anything wrong with people doing that. I see absolutely nothing wrong with people doing that. That's just not what I'm going to be doing. We can't all be doing the same thing. And I will never speak against reparations because I think it goes against what I'm trying to do if I even say that. It means I'm saying nobody owes us. That's not true. They do owe us. They owe us more than they can ever repay. We also owe ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We also owe ourselves that self-determination. That spirit needs to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So those two things can happen at the same time. They can be correct at the same time. They can coexist at the same time. It's moving the greater thing forward.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Be doing something. Don't sit around and talk about reparations. Be legally doing something. If it's about getting land that was promised and reneged on, if it's about, education opportunities, whatever the hell it is, if it's moving this freaking mountain out of the people's way, just do it. Just do something. We be sitting up here talking about, we spend too much time talking about what people who are actually working are doing wrong, instead of doing what we think should be done.
Can you say that one more time?
We spend too much time complaining about what people are working should be doing, instead of doing what we think should actually be done. If you think it should be done
Amen.
this way, do it.
Amen.
Multiple strategies. Look, we looking for that, what we always say, we're looking for that critical brick in this wall that'll bring the whole thing coming down, right? I can't find it by myself. Damn it, if you find it knocking your head against the wall about reparations and you hit that critical brick with your head, I'm going to clap and cheer and applaud, because that's the goal. If you taking that road and you get there before me, more power to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you even taking the buck dancing road and you get there, I don't think you will. But if you do, if all that, jiving and stuff is getting you closer to that table so you can knock it over, I'm going to be cheering for you.
Mm-hmm. And
If that's the strategy, I don't have time for that.
mm-hmm. And I
Just
just
don't get
want
in my way.
that, but see, Holla, what have we said? That's the issue. It's not the
Don't
fact
get
we
in my
tell people
way,
this. We support
because
reparations.
I'm going to knock you out.
We support reparations. How many times, Holla, have we said that reparations are owed? We said, listen, reparations are owed. The United States government needs to give it. We support y'all. But the minute we say, hey, we're gonna focus on what we inherited. We want to have somewhere where we actually are able to control our own destiny and be able to live our lives. How many times are we met with pushback and people say, "Oh well, y'all leaving the struggle, y'all Cowtown." Listen, that's
Yeah.
your issue. That ain't my issue.
They
You can
think that
take the struggle.
they think
I'm
that
not.
we're against it, and I don't understand why they think that. Because every time we've talked about this, we've basically been giving them advice on, if you want to achieve this, the best way to do it.
Right.
That's always been our position. It's like, I just posted something in the chat. If you can see how much the United States is given to Israel in foreign aid, they actually built their defense system.
Because
You know what I'm saying?
there's a common goal. If I was if Liberia was the United States, and let's say if Haiti was the United States and Liberia was Israel, had that kind of power, Haiti would do the same thing for Liberia. I see
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. They on the
Right.
same team. That's what
Right.
homies do for each other.
Yep.
That's what they do. And then Brother Baruti is asking a question that's important. He says, do you think Liberia is an unfinished project and that reparations should be given to it by the U.S. on behalf of African Americans as a nation-to-nation pathway to restitution? No, and yes. um, I said no first because with that kind of bilateral interaction comes a lot of interference. And in many ways, the United States has given a lot of aid to Liberia, and especially during the Cold War, Liberia received more resources than any other African country from the United States. And it was all at the detriment of Liberia, all of it. So that's a different show for a different day. But that's why I said no first. The reason I said yes, secondly, is because, again, two things can be true. If properly managed, if the agenda is controlled by the sisters and brothers that are going to be executing it and all that kind of stuff, of course. But we don't need that in order to build Liberia. Liberia isn't broke. Liberia has more wealth per capita, wealth to population ratio, meaning natural resource to population ratio, than almost any country on the planet. So the issue isn't that Liberia needs foreign capital to develop, it's that Liberia needs its own resources to be controlled for its own benefit. So Liberia is building other countries, other nations' wealth, and not its own. That's the real issue. Not that Liberia is not poor. Liberia, billions and billions and billions of dollars in raw materials and in iron, in things that have a finite, source, are just being bled out of the country. What Firestone did for the U.S. military infrastructure, agricultural infrastructure, and road infrastructure, people forget. If you take Liberia out of the equation, which is the source of Firestone rubber, because they clearly always talk about how Firestone transformed the United States. Just remember that rubber, the raw material that Firestone used to transform the U.S. economy and put it in one of the most powerful positions in the world, that resource came from that small country, Liberia. Rubber. Look it up. And we don't, so it's not that Liberia doesn't have the resource. If we can be the catalyst for the U.S. economic boom, the automobile boom, the road infrastructure boom. Right now, you can drive from New York to Los Angeles on Interstate 80. And all of that was through Firestone, Ford Motor, and this whole rubber revolution. Farm equipment, agriculture, war machines. Look up how much this rubber resource contributed to the development of those very powerful arsenals that the U.S. has for its economic stability. Food production, military, and transportation. Much of that came from this raw material from the bare hands of my grandfathers at Firestone Rubber Plantation. And we don't talk about it. So it's not what I need to have happen. It's not a gift. Take your foot off our necks. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. Take your foot off our necks. Stop strangulating us. Stop using us. This is enough.
I really want to with Michael's point, because that point, that definition of power base and gets the power base a source of authority, influence, or support, especially in politics or negotiation. This is clear. This is clearly a strategy. Those with a different strategy can proceed as they wish. I like that. I like that comment. I just really love that.
Let me see that again. It says, okay, power base is source of authority, influence. Yep.
That to me, that encompasses, that we have that inheritance. That inheritance. That we have an inheritance in that.
They didn't leave us nothing. They did not. That lie that they ain't leave a mom, but they died and they leave us nothing. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. That is a lie. We just don't know what to do with what we were left with. That's all. That's a different thing.
And they're calling themselves nothing if you say that. They left you.
Mm-hmm.
That too. Besides all so that's powerful. Calling yourself nothing. And even if we didn't have a land, we got us.
Right.
It's beautiful that we do have something to invest in. And people, got to stop this. Always, we can't do anything unless they do something.
Yeah, could you imagine being on a Super Bowl winning team and all the teammates are saying, "Oh, we can't win. They're too good."
Maybe they could give us some of their quarterbacks. Maybe they can give us a couple of the jerseys. Maybe the Magic's in their jerseys. What the hell are we talking about?
Yeah, those people won't be on the team. That's what'll happen.
Hmm.
They just give us a couple of their jerseys. We'll be just fine. I
Hmm.
mean,
For me, it is we have the inheritance. We have to embrace it. Like Holly, we said, we just have to embrace it. We have to accept it and
Get
make it great.
involved, man. Get involved. Focus on it and get involved.
yep,
That's all. If
do
you focus
something.
on it, could you imagine if we, like across the board, accepted that this is our homeland?
This is our
How powerful
inheritance.
that would be?
If we embrace it, just embraced it,
It's
understand
not
that.
going to happen until we make it happen. You know, nobody, listen, I hate to use this Israel comparison, but
I
that's
hate.
how folks think.
Yeah.
Nobody would be over there fighting for Israel if somebody didn't go there and say, we're the biblical Jews, which, you know, and this is our homeland. And we're going to make this happen. People followed people. It didn't just, everybody didn't just get up all at once. Because if that were the case, what
Yeah.
were they doing in Germany? What were they doing in Poland?
Didn't that
What were they
guy,
doing?
what's his name? Herschel something. Didn't
Yeah,
that guy
Theodore
get a lot
Hudson.
of didn't he get a lot of pushback? It wasn't like he was popular.
No, he
He
wasn't.
did, because people thought he was being a tyrant and a horrible human being. Resurrecting a dead language and culture that nobody was speaking anymore. He was like, I'm going to resurrect this language. I mean, he literally created an ethnicity out of many diverse people, resurrected the language and everything. That's visionary as heck, man.
Hmm.
That's like us going and digging up ancient Kemetic language and teaching it, and everybody speaks it. And this is our identity. That's how profound what he did was. It was literally a dead language. They didn't pass that language down. They resurrected it. It wasn't spoken anymore. This
I just
is
find it funny that they praise him now, but they gave him hell during the time.
they not some people gave most people gave him help, but he had support. He didn't do it alone. And he wasn't worried about the noise in the market. He was focused on what he went to buy, as we say in Liberia. He wasn't
Hmm.
worried about the noise in the market. He stayed focused on what he went to buy. And he bought it, right? Or
I
you
got,
could say he focused on what he went to sell and he
I
sold it.
gotta use that. That's a great exprestion.
I mean,
I
that's
gotta
just
steal
oh,
that
that's
one.
not mine. That's a Liberian saying, because you focus on what you're going. You don't worry about, you know, as African Americans say, the dogs may bark, but the caravan moves on. You have to focus on what you're doing. The distractions are there, but you just got to keep going. And this guy was a freaking genius. He was a genius. And now the concept of a homeland for Jews, people who were Jews were scattered around the world, and they still are, right? You've got Jews everywhere around the world still. Just because you have a homeland doesn't mean you don't have a right to live in other places and thrive in other places. But this is a psychological connection, emotional and patriotic connection to another place that you have created in your mind and manifested into reality, possibly unjustly, you know, and it's there. It's a reality. But here we have a situation where it's not unjust.
Hmm.
So, you know, what's
Build
that
it up.
baseball
I
movie where they said if
remember.
you build it, they will come? What is that
Yeah,
baseball
I was
movie?
gonna. I was gonna say that because I remember I was watching what you said like about the Super Bowl, but it's similar in college sports. It's Dawn Staley. So she's the coach of South Carolina, and before she was a coach there, South Carolina's basketball team was irrelevant. Nobody was going to South Carolina, and over the
Right.
years she built it up, and now it's the number one. People want to go there, and that's what we're doing. We're gonna build it up to where people are gonna want to go naturally.
Right.
They're gonna want to go. Like, hey, I want to go to Cape Mountain. I want to go to Cape Mountain. Man, I want to surf in Robertsport and see the beautiful Lake Peaceful. I want to
Hmm.
go to what is it, Sapo National Park and just see the beautiful forest and everything there.
Yeah, because if we wait for the masses of people to agree before we act, we nothing's gonna ever happen. It'll never happen because most people are born to be followers. Most
Mm-hmm.
people are born sheep. Most people come in this world and they're not there to drive anything. They're there to live.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're
there's
average everyday
drivers.
people.
Yeah, there's always a vanguard. You can't expect everybody to think like a vanguard. Doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
What should we do it?
The masses of black people are just living their lives. It is us, who have to be who's carrying the torch and who's making things move. The average black person is just going to work, they spending time with their family. That's it. That's what they doing. The average black person is not going out like, man, we gonna go here and this is how we going. They're not doing that. The average black person is sitting down watching right now, watching the NFL game. Sunday, they watching the NFL game with their family, eating dinner, that's what they
No,
doing. And you can't get mad at them. You can't
people,
get mad.
the average person in Israel before this very, flare up,
Genocidal war.
before this flare up, the average person, I mean, the average person in Israel is going about the business.
Mm-hmm.
People like to go about their business. It's human nature. Flare up happens, everybody's called to arms. This is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's not going to be hyper vigilant in problem solving. That's the gift and the burden of intelligence. That's the gift and the burden of consciousness. Most people just want to eat, have shelter, and that's it. It's other people who are thinking about how to make their lives worse or better. Right? It's other people trying to control how to make your life worse or better. But for the most part, people don't want to be bothered with that. It's not cowardice, really. It's just, people just
They
lazy.
doing it. Yeah. Ohala, Michael did one of your land infrastructure nation of commandments. Know the definition of power, the ability to
Right.
make others conform to your viewpoint as if it were their own.
Amen.
I like that one. Hold up. I'm going to post that on my page.
Yeah, we gotta bring back the land infrastructure nation of the Ten Commandments because that needs to be that
I'm
needs
going to
to.
put that on my page.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So just do. Oh, I love this. Land infrastructure nation of commandment number 4: connect, not convince.
Yeah, connect with other people of like mind, which we've been doing a good job at.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's really the point of this. This is why we have this discussion. Is just you know you have to have you have to have a power base number one, and build the inheritance. You got to do something. You have to do something. You have to be proactive. And we see, or I'm gonna say, speak for myself. I see that as building that inheritance, so that we have that power base. As what Michael said. That's my objective. That's what I work in. That's what I strive for, and that's why I brought up the stories of Barclay and John Day, because they did it for us. They built it. They gave us inheritance. Now we just got to run with it. And what are you going to do about it? I know what I'm going to do. Hollop knows. We know what we're going to do. What are you
Yeah,
going to
and
do?
I think each person has to ask themselves, what are you doing in terms of gaining any type of socioeconomic and political power for your people? And if your answer is nothing, then we are where we are. Or you are where you are, I should say.
Yeah.
But I know we're doing what we have to do. I can look myself in the mirror and say that I've helped or tried to bring the conversation forward, move it forward as much as I possibly can. At the end of the day, because when I first got on YouTube, all they were talking about was just which religion is the true religion, and just a bunch of nonsense. And I was part of the people involved in swinging the narrative over to Africa and nationhood. So I can feel proud of that. Because they wasn't talking about it before. Whose God is the truth and all this nonsense.
Who
So now Africa is on the table.
You have to build it up. Like we've said before, we said it in the last broadcast, we're gonna say it again. Nationhood does not occur by osmosis. Reparations does not occur by osmosis. It's not just gonna land in your hand and say, here's reparations. It's not gonna land here and say, here's your hand. Yeah. You have to use what you have and build it up. You have to. You can only control what you can do. And that's what we got. What can you do? I cannot, what other groups is doing, I have no control over that. But I have control over my actions. And what can we do? And my goal is the inheritance. You use that inheritance, you build it up, you have a power base, you have more influence, you have more leverage, and you can actually use it.
And you know what really makes me feel positive? Watch the damage that just this few amount of people are going to do. Just watch. It doesn't even take a whole lot. The damage that we're going to do in a good way is going to show exactly what we're talking about. And that's what makes me feel positive. I don't have this doom and gloom. Oh, woe is me. I don't ever feel that way. And I don't even get frustrated until I come across Negroes. Like, as long as I can keep the Negroes at bay, I'm good.
We don't have to start from scratch. We have an inheritance. We have something to start with. We have something to work with. We have resources. It's already there.
Yep. Peace to the chat room.
Yep. I think we're having our lounge today at around 8 p.m. So if you're a BAIO member, tune in. I know, Carl, any last words?
No, I will never have last words. Last words not gonna ever find me thinking they're the last. My last words will not be spoken knowing that they were last words.
Closing remarks. How about closing remarks?
Like Jeff, what is it? Sheikh Rabara said, Conrad, death will not find us thinking that we died. So, no, I just think it's beautiful that the reason we have diversity in thought is because that's how the world is designed. That's by nature itself, right? Forests have diversity and thrive. If you plant an orange grove, it's gonna die if you leave it alone, because orange trees cannot exist all by themselves. You need other types of plants in there to create life and sustain life. It's the same thing with ideas. It's the same thing with ideas. We need diversity in thought in order to grow. Divergent views, different opinions. The issue is, what is the goal?
Mm-hmm.
So those are my final words for this broadcast. But
closing remarks. She gave her closing remarks.
Those are my closing remarks for this broadcast. But yeah, I think I welcome different thoughts and perspectives, and I always interject mine even when no one asks for them, because that difference of opinion helps us to think, and it helps push us to growth. I think the way I think today because I listen to other ideas. If I never did, I'd be a completely different person. Right? So I don't have it all figured out. The only thing I know is where I want to go. And I understand I must be working towards getting there. and we
Mhm.
can regroup and redirect and avoid obstacles and whatever we have to do. The end game is the same. So I welcome diversity, and this, that's why Save the State and BAIO have connected, because we're not exactly the same, but we have the same goals.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. So thanks so much. This is very it's positive. I love the topic. I love everything that you brought to the table, Hold Up and Jabari. This is dope.
Thank you.
This is dope.
Yep. This is great. And like I said, we're going to have more of these coming up next Sunday. We're going to have more content given out through this week. So make sure to stay tuned. Again, thank you to all the subscribers. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Sign up. Make sure, we're getting this ball rolling. Join the movement. Be part of history. And feel happy that you've left an impact and a legacy. That's what we're all about. And with
Yeah.
that, y'all, peace, fam.
Peace.